When Frieza killed Vegeta on planet Namek, it was one of the most emotional moments in the entire series, and it really was one of the most memorable as well. But when you look underneath the surface of Vegeta planet Namek, it was when Frieza killed Vegeta on planet Namek, it was one of the most emotional moments in the entire series, and it really was one of the most memorable as well. But when you look underneath the surface of Vegeta's final words to Goku and the emotion that came out of his body and out of his eyes, there's a lot more there than you would think just from watching it. There's a lot more beneath the surface, a lot more to think about. And joining me to talk about this topic is, of course, the expert on Vegeta from Space Australia, Super Jay. And hey, Jay.
How's it going, guys? Great to be here. No song today because this isn't Talk Dragon Ball, but I'm still happy to be here.
Yes, very happy that you're here. So let's talk about Vegeta's death on planet Namek. Vegeta, for the first time in the series, when Vegeta was killed by Frieza, as he's dying, before and after he was blasted through the chest, we see tears coming out of his eyes. This was the first time that we ever saw Vegeta cry. And a lot of people have misunderstood that as Vegeta crying because of the physical pain he was in. And that's only part of the puzzle. I've always saw it as he's crying because of the emotional pain that Frieza had put him through. But there's also another layer to this that I want to bring up with you, and that's the whole thing about, you know, Vegeta's kind of pride being the reason that he cried. So let's go ahead and dig into that topic. So back to Namek, you know, Frieza is fighting Vegeta. Vegeta thinks that he's the legendary warrior. Turns out that he's not. He thought he was. Frieza pretty much humbles him and starts to torture him because from Frieza's point of view, Vegeta was a traitor. And at the end of the day, Goku arrives on the battlefield. Vegeta's done. I mean, Frieza just smoked his shit. And then Vegeta starts to, I guess, pour his heart out to Goku. What was going on right here, Jay?
I mean, this whole arc, Vegeta was really about gaining the Dragon Balls for immortality so he could defeat Frieza. So his objective did shift slightly initially from beating Goku temporarily to basically trying to kill Frieza so he could be the supreme ruler of the universe, galaxy, whatever you want to call it. But the thing here is, his plans obviously didn't go the way he wanted them to. But there's also another aspect to this. Vegeta progressively got stronger through the Namek arc. He was getting to a new height of power every time we saw him fight, and he knew within himself he was getting stronger and stronger and stronger, to the point where when he gets that final boost in power against Frieza, he kind of felt that he could take Frieza on. he felt that he was at a level of power that was high enough to defeat Frieza and obtain his goal, even if it wasn't with the help of immortality. And Kael'thas really sums it up very well in this scene for me. Vegeta just lost all hope. He knew he was going to die, and that's really where his breaking point started. The first time you see Vegeta cry, a lot of people forget, isn't actually when he's pouring his heart out to Goku. It's when he knows that he's helpless against Frieza. He's actually crying when he's just sitting there in the air. And he gets beaten. It's one of the more brutal beatings in Dragon Ball. It's hard for me to watch even now. I don't like seeing my favorite character get beaten in that manner because it really is torturous, and it's not a nice way. Even though Vegeta is a bit of a dick in that arc, it's not a nice way to see any character get treated, really.
Yeah.
But it is also character development for Vegeta, because when Goku shows up, he has no other choice. He would never ask Goku for help, but he has no other choice to ask Goku for help because he knows he's going to die. He knows he's going to die. It may have been, progressed a little bit quicker by the fact that he was shit-talking Frieza, and Frieza sped up the process a little bit by putting a beam through his chest, so that sped up the recovery. Either way, he was going to die. He knew he was going to die, and he also knew the only person that could probably avenge the Saiyans or avenge avenge the Saiyans or avenge himself, his family, his honor and his pride was Goku. That's the only person he had left to ask. So it was really a last resort. And it's really, really a touching scene because Vegeta would never show this side of his character ever if he wasn't in this position. But because he was put in this position, you see all these years of frustration come to the surface from Vegeta. He never really wanted to serve Frieza at all. He always wanted to be his own man. And he never really cared about anything other than, being the strongest Saiyan alive and, just being strong. For him, his strength is his pride and his honor, and that's what he lives by. That's kind of like his moral code, is the way I see it. That was gone. And the last thing he had was basically seeing Frieza fall before. That's what he wanted to see, was Frieza die, and he knew he was not going to live to see that. So it was really an outpouring of emotion, basically telling Goku, in a way, why he acts the way he does, why he is so hateful, why he is so, cruel towards others. He never really had a proper upbringing from what we see in the anime. He was sort of raised, and it's filler scenes, but what we see in the filler scenes, he's raised essentially by Frieza, from what we know. And he was never given a chance to be... And Nappa, yeah. He was never given a chance to be his own man, sort of. And Frieza broke him. Frieza broke him physically, and Frieza broke him mentally. So, for him to, basically just show his emotions like that to Goku, it was such a touching scene, and there's a lot more to it than Vegeta just crying because he knows he's gonna die, and he knows he's not gonna beat Frieza. It's basically him pouring out a lifetime worth of frustration, because Vegeta had never been in this position before. I mean, there had been times where other characters had pushed him to the brink of death. You've got Goku, you've got Zarbon. Well, not necessarily Goku, but the fight on Earth nearly killed him. Zarbon and Raccoon nearly killed him. So there's been times where he knew that he was in trouble, but this was the first time where he was facing death in the face. So it was really, he had no other choice but to beg Goku for help. And really, that's where I feel that this scene is so different from any other scene in the series. And I feel, like I mentioned, Vegeta had that outpouring of emotion because he had no other choice. He needed to know and let Goku know how important it was to him that Frieza fall or die by the hands of a Saiyan. That's what he wanted.
I was going to say that, and it's interesting because there's several things going on here. And one thing I will say before we go any further is, and I know I say this a lot, but you need to listen to what I'm about to tell you. You need to watch the scene in Japanese if you haven't, because the dub version of this scene is different. They kind of changed the narrative, because in the dub version, the narrative that they implied was that Vegeta was upset because Frieza killed his father. He killed my father, blah, blah, blah. That's dub shit. That's not actually what the actual narrative being told there is. Now, I'm not saying that Vegeta did not feel pain from the fact that his father was killed by Frieza, but if you know anything about these characters, you know that they don't have a strong bond with their parents as much as you would think that they would. So even though Vegeta was angry about that, it wasn't the driving force behind his emotion. There's several things going on. So I'm telling you, watch it in Japanese with subs. You need to do it, because otherwise you're not understanding the real narrative being told here. And the real narrative being told, there's a number of different things. Number one, as you said, Jay, it's a lifetime of being essentially somebody else's lapdog, and then finding out that that lapdog is the reason why you're even the lapdog, because he wiped out your entire race. So like he said in Resurrection F the dub, you know, prince of what? What are you the prince of? You know, prince of nothing. And obviously that bugged him. But to me, the other layer to all this is that he thought in his head that he could beat him, and when he couldn't, it was that grim realization. We've all had this happen to us in our lives where we have expectations for things, whether it be relationships, whether it be businesses, whether it be our family members that get terminally ill, and we hope they make it and then they don't. Not everybody's been through that before, but some of us have. And then when reality hits, you know, especially when you lose a loved one, when reality hits, you have no choice but to just become what Vegeta became. But to me, I think the piece of the puzzle that a lot of fans overlook, and I want to get your thoughts on this before we close out, is that I think that a big reason why he was in tears like that is because he realized that at the end of the day, the only person who could avenge his race, and like you said, Frieza must die at the hands of a Saiyan, Saiyajin, however you want to say it, you know what I'm saying, Space Warrior, was gonna be Goku. It had to have been a low-class warrior. All your life, you're being built up as being this super elite warrior who is the toughest of his race, and yet when Vegeta first met Goku on Earth, he obviously underestimated him. And yeah, Vegeta technically did win that fight, but he took a pounding. He never thought he would take a pounding. And there's that infamous scene where he's wiping the blood from his mouth, and he's like, I can't believe I'm bleeding. I can't believe this guy made me bleed, which is just fantastic stuff. So I think the fact that he came to a realization that the only person that could kill Frieza was not Vegeta, that was Goku, I think that really hurt his pride. And I think that, it's that whole come to Jesus meeting, that come to reality meeting where you're like, I can't believe this is happening, and he is accepting it in tears, and he's kind of happy about it. In a weird way, he's kind of happy, because remember, he tells Frieza, he's like, Frieza, you're screwed now. Goku, or not Goku, Kakarot, or Kakaroto, he's gonna kick your ass. And for the first time, Vegeta actually submits to Goku and says, okay, bro, you can do this. And I think it's a very powerful scene. And I gotta be honest, if that was the last we saw of Vegeta, it would have been a great arc for that character just right then and there. Obviously, there's a bigger arc that was told by Toriyama later on. So how do you feel about that aspect of it, with him having to submit to Goku? I think that hurt him.
Yeah, but the thing about Vegeta is he had gone through a lifetime of subjugation his entire, since he was a child, so he'd been under Frieza's control for a very long time. And it got to a point, obviously, where he just accepted that he didn't care if he was the one that killed Frieza. It just had to be, like I mentioned, by the hands of a Saiyan. That's all he cared about. He wanted Goku to avenge the race, and Vegeta was never upset about his father. Like, we don't know that.
That's dub shit.
It's more of he was upset. He's definitely upset that his race was wiped out. That's one thing, because he is a very prideful man, and there was a filler scene where he said he didn't care about his race, but that was a filler scene, and I don't necessarily buy that, because he is a very prideful man. He's proud in his Saiyan heritage. He's constantly referencing himself in both dubs as the Prince of Saiyans. Yeah. So he is proud of his Saiyan heritage, and he just basically accepted that it had to be a Saiyan that killed Frieza. It did, or defeated Frieza. It didn't matter who it was, even if it was Goku. And it was a very touching scene. I've always said that you could have ended Vegeta's arc there. You could have ended it at the end of the Cell games, when he basically, his motivation to be a warrior, as Zeon has pointed out in his recent videos, is that his motivation to be a warrior is Goku, and without Goku around, he really has no reason to fight anymore. So that would have been another acceptable way to close his arc. Because Vegeta was no pushover at the end of the Cell arc. He was a strong fighter in his own right, so that would have been a fine way to close his arc out. But I do agree that Vegeta accepting that Goku was better than him at that time, I definitely found that to be a touching moment. But it was more, for me, it was the outpouring of emotions, because it was a lifetime worth of emotions built up that just came to the surface, and that's what was most touching about that scene for me.
It was very powerful. So let's go to the comment section. What do you think about that scene? where would you rank it as far as powerful moments, not just for Vegeta, but in the whole series? Because I would say that moment, as well as the moment where he's going to sacrifice himself, and of course, my Bulma, but that one was more recent. I would say.
And don't forget when he goes apeshit when Trunks dies. That's also another one.
I love that moment, and don't forget when he caught Goku in Super. I love that moment as well. Even though it was a smaller thing, it wasn't as emotional as this. But let us know your thoughts below. Thank you again, Jay.
Not a problem. Love being a guest on your channel, man.
Yes, go sub to Super Jay, and you'll learn a lot more about Vegeta. That's for sure. And let us know below what you think about Vegeta dying and the different layers of this real good topic. Different layers of what was going through his head. Anyways, I'll catch y'all down the road, monkeys.
That's universal.
The Shamblers rise, slay them, and gather the seeds.
Your defenses fall apart.
So recently I did a video about the 5 greatest kills from Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z. Well, in this video we're gonna flip it, and I'm gonna talk about the 5 times that Vegeta's taken the worst beatdowns of anybody in the series. Let's talk about the 5 worst Vegeta beatdowns in Dragon Ball Z. Hey Super Tubers, don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and spread the word about the channel, and find me on these social media platforms. I had a tough time picking what my number 5 was going to be, so I went with one of the more underrated beatdowns of Vegeta's life. Back on Planet Namek when Vegeta faced off against Recoome and Recoome put the boom on Vegeta. Now, not only is this beatdown brutal as hell, and it would be of course followed up by another very uncomfortable beatdown of Gohan, but this beatdown also showed Vegeta's balls as a fighter, and Vegeta's always had balls throughout the entire series. This once again showed the kind of balls that he had with his never give up attitude. But it also set the tone for when Goku would arrive, one-shot Recoome, and prove his utter dominance over Vegeta, causing Vegeta to freak out and start to believe that Goku may indeed be the warrior of legend. But those of you who don't remember this fight, I encourage you to go back and watch it, and also read the manga, because I feel it has some of Toriyama's absolute best and most beautiful art. Of course, at the end of the day, Vegeta would get the big kill on Recoome after Goku incapacitates him by shooting him up his ass. Let's not forget that. Number 4 on the list should be an obvious one to anybody who's seen this series and remembers this, but number 4 is when Zarbon mauled Vegeta during their first fight. This is the first time I can remember a villain fighting another villain in this aspect, where one villain just absolutely mauled the other. I mean, we saw Vegeta take out Dodoria and Kui, but this is a totally different kind of scenario. In their initial fight, Zarbon in his base form pretty much stood for the chance against Vegeta, and then we discovered that Zarbon can transform. Once he transformed into the hideous beast that was formerly a beauty, Vegeta had no chance. I mean, this fight is so freaking brutal. The headbutts, just the brutality of it all. Vegeta took a pounding. And the worst kind of poundings are the ones that you don't expect from people who you underestimate, which seems to be the story of Vegeta's life. Zarbon mauled Vegeta so bad that he had to get put in a rejuvenation tank, which at the end of the day gave him a Zenkai boost, which is good, but nonetheless, it got to the point where Vegeta was knocked unconscious and taken to Frieza. What did we learn from this fight? Never judge a book by its cover. And I guess Vegeta just can't learn this lesson. Number 3 on the list was probably the first example in his entire life, I would say, of Vegeta having a damn near-death experience. When he came to Earth with Nappa after disposing of Nappa in a somewhat foolish move when you think about it, Vegeta took so much so much from these Earth fighters and survived that it really is an admirable performance. I mean, during this fight, he got mauled by a Kaioken ×3 and 4 Kamehameha. He survived getting blasted in the eye. Yajirobe cut off his tail and sliced his back. He got nailed with a Genki Dama that damn near freaking put his lights out, and survived all of that and still came back and still kept coming and still wanted to hurt these people so bad. And it wasn't until Gohan had gone into his Uzaru form, his grade 8 form, and literally landed on Vegeta that Vegeta said, enough is enough, I'm getting the fuck out and I will live to fight another day. As a kid, I can remember this fight being so damn brutal, and it literally took 4 guys. It took 4 guys to get Vegeta to finally retreat. And you know what? Like him or not, you have to admit one thing, and this list will prove this. Vegeta's got some balls. Go back and rewatch this and remember just how utterly brutal this entire scenario was for Vegeta. For the first time in his life, he felt pain, both to his body and to his pride. Number 2 takes us all the way to the end of the series, and I can never forget just the amount of pain that Vegeta must have felt when fighting Kid Buu. Besides the fact that Vegeta literally had absolutely no chance of winning this fight, and he knew it, and the fact that he went in there and pretty much allowed himself to be used as a distraction, swallowed his pride as a result, and let Kid Buu mercilessly beat the living shit out of him while Goku was powering up. There is something to be said about that. And one of the most admirable parts about the fight is that even though Vegeta had no chance, he just kept coming and coming and coming, and he just did not give up and continued to pretty much put himself in an immense amount of pain for the righteous cause. Not to mention that, as Goku had stated, had Vegeta been killed because he was already technically dead, he would have been wiped away from existence. So Vegeta literally fought and literally knew that at any moment Kid Buu could have wiped away his existence and kept going. I almost made this number 1, but there's only one beatdown I can think of that's worse. But before that, let's talk about the honorable mentions. Even though Vegeta is a fan favorite and nothing will change that, he pretty much is the Dragon Ball Z whipping boy in many cases. And there are so many examples of him just being murked by several different villains, and that's what this list is all about. Before we get to our number 1 though, let's revisit some other beatdowns. What about how when Fat Buu had Vegeta in that Randy Couture, Mark the Hammer Coleman-esque Fedor Emelianenko ground and pound when he had him tied up in his sludge and was just left, right to his grill piece? What about that one? Of course, one of my favorites, and a lot of people will agree with this one, and they'll never forget this moment, is when 18 kicked Vegeta in the arm and broke his arm and he screamed. You know, that shocked a lot of people, and to me was one of the all-time great moments. And again, it all comes down to Vegeta underestimating his opponent. What about Cell? What about when Cell first became perfect and hit that incredible Macho Man Randy Savage-esque elbow drop on Vegeta's back? One elbow drop, one, put this son of a bitch out cold. I guess Vegeta doesn't have the power of the Ultimate Warrior where he can kick out of like 6 of them. And let's not forget Cell's little pimp smack when Vegeta went off on him after Trunks died. He pimp smacked his ass. So poor Vegeta, I mean, it's just bad times for him, but nothing is worse than my number 1. Man, Vegeta did not have a good time on Planet Namek. Number 1 on the list is number 1 because of the exact opposite of number 2. And that's Vegeta's fight with Frieza on Planet Namek when Frieza was in his final form and Vegeta stood absolutely no chance whatsoever, and Frieza, much like Kid Buu, spent a considerable amount of time torturing Vegeta. Now, the reason why I chose this as number one is not just because of the fact that Frieza tortured Vegeta as a punishment for betraying him, because in Frieza's eyes, Frieza had always looked out for Vegeta, even though the audience knows that he looked out for him for very selfish reasons. Frieza felt that Vegeta had betrayed him, and thus felt so much pleasure in pounding Vegeta consistently and torturing him to make him understand the mistake he made. Not to mention that Vegeta had been gloating that he had indeed become the legendary. Frieza was sure to make Vegeta come back down to reality and realize that that was simply just not the case. But to me, what stands out most about this fight and how uncomfortable it was for Vegeta and for everybody else to watch was that this is the only time that I can remember in the entire series, with the exception of maybe the Broly movie, if you want to count that, is the fact that Vegeta pretty much lost the will to fight. Vegeta loses the will to fight when he realizes that there's no way he could even touch Final Form Frieza, and at the end of the day, pours his heart out to Goku and tells Goku the history of his race, the history of his relationship with Frieza. Not to mention the tears that came out of his eyes for the first time ever that we had seen as an audience were very, very, very powerful. And when you really think about it, Vegeta's tears
pushing up
was not because he was dying. His tears were because not only was his pride shattered, but because he knew that the final remaining warrior in his race was not him. It was a low-level, non-elite Kael'thas. And it's very powerful. One of the most powerful scenes in the series that must be watched in its original version to really grasp the intensity of it. And finally, Frieza puts Vegeta out of his misery. And to me, this is the absolute number one pick for the worst beatdown Vegeta ever got in his entire life. And unlike Kid Buu, where he kept fighting back, this time he didn't fight back at all. Even though Vegeta has stacked up an impressive body count, he's taken his own fair share of beatings. But when you really think about it, that's also part of the reason why he's so damn popular. Because no matter what, he's got balls, he'll go in there, he'll fight you to the death, win, lose, or draw, and not back away. Which is why we all love him. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you down the road.
Epic.
Dragon Ball Super has been a very polarizing series thus far, and there are things that the series has done right and things the series has done wrong. Well, myself and Laughingstock Media have done a two-part series of videos now where we're going to talk about what Super has done right and what Super has done wrong. And on this video, we're going to... So recently, when Frieza killed Vegeta on planet Namek, it was one of the most emotional moments in the entire series, and it really was one of the most memorable as well. But when you look underneath the surface of Vegeta's final words to Goku and the emotion that came out of his body and out of his eyes, there's a lot more there than you would think just from watching it. There's a lot more beneath the surface, a lot more to think about. And joining me to talk about this topic is, of course, the expert on Vegeta from Space Australia, Super Jay. And hey, Jay.